opportunity. And first off, I'd like to thank Mrs. Songer from Elk Grove High School for organizing this event. Go ahead, you can clap. As well as Ms. Durbin and Mr. Hammerhand here at Wheeling High School who have organized a specific event for today. I'd like to thank the Citizens Advocacy Center and the League of Women's Voters for being here and participating. As well as a number of candidates and current political office holders. So, without a doubt, we live in the best country in the world. Now, we are not perfect, and we were never intended to be perfect. But that is our goal. Even in the preamble to the Constitution, our goal is to work towards being a more perfect union. And that process has always involved extending the right to vote to more and more people. When they wrote the Constitution, the only people who could legally vote were white men who owned property. Over time, we've amended the Constitution, or we have had Supreme Court cases who extended the right to vote to black men, then women, including black women and every other woman, regardless of race, to 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, because for a long time you could only vote if you're 21. And the right to vote is powerful because that is what gives you the power. You have a say. You represent, or you elect those who represent you and our states here in our country to make the laws and make the decisions that represent our will. So I know you're young, but this is the perfect time to start thinking about the process and how the system works. Too often in the United States politics, we get too worried about just the president and who that person is. But we're going into midterm elections in a couple weeks. We have the president of Wheeling here today. Go ahead, clap it up, Mr. Horcher. There are levels to government, and one of the most important levels is right here in our local communities, the municipal level and our state level. These are the individuals who have the most direct impact on our day-to-day lives. So thank you very much for being here. I know you will make us all proud and be attentive and clap when it's appropriate to clap and be quiet the rest of the time. So make us very proud. At this time, let's welcome Ms. Durbin.
Good morning, and welcome to Wheeling High School's first Engaged Student Engagement Initiative. Our third president, Thomas Jefferson, said, "The cornerstone of democracy rests on the foundation of an educated electorate." As some of you may know, on August 21st, 2015, Governor Rauner signed House Bill 4025 into law, requiring that Illinois high schools throughout the state add a civics component to their curriculum. This law comes at a time when our country, state, county, and city are facing issues from growing our economy to preserving our planet to protecting us from crime at home and terrorists abroad, all while trying to allow us to live as freely as possible. On Tuesday, November 6th, our country will have an election where many candidates, including some on this stage, will ask the voters for an opportunity to represent all of you when making important decisions at a federal, state, and local level. You might have heard the term midterm when you hear these elections being discussed in the media because they are taking place in the middle of the president's four-year term. Although President Trump is not on the ballot, these elections are sometimes considered by many to be a measure of how much people approve of how the party in power is doing. At the national level, the party is the Republican Party. But in Illinois, our power at the state level is divided between a democratically controlled state assembly and a Republican governor. Today during lunch period, students can meet with representatives from the League of Women Voters to vote in a mock election and to register to vote. Bring your iPad, your photo ID, and social security number to register. Before we meet our candidates, I'd first like to call up Miriam Judar from the I believe it's Benjamin that's here today, from the Citizen Advocacy Center, followed by Heidi Graham from the League of Women Voters, who would like to share a few words about their organizations. Please welcome them.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I am not Miriam. I am Ben Silver. I'm a community lawyer with Citizen Advocacy Center. I've got about 10 minutes here. I want to spend maybe 5 to 7 explaining a little bit what Citizen Advocacy Center does, and then I will leave a little bit of time if you have any questions, or I can share a story at that point. So Citizen Advocacy Center is a nonpartisan, nonprofit community legal organization. So we don't support any candidates or parties. Our job is neutral, and it's to inform the public about their rights as citizens, as residents of Illinois. That can range anything from their participatory rights, how they can participate in government, their voting rights, how anything in their government works. So we do that through a number of different outlets. One, we do a lot of civic education. That can mean coming to a school like this. It can mean educating your teachers. We often do professional conferences with your teachers. And it can also mean members of the public coming to us to try and find out how something works. So we operate through a number of different laws, but the main ones that we work with a lot are called the Freedom of Information Act, the Open Meetings Act, and one you've probably heard more about, the First Amendment, your free speech rights. I want to go through a little bit about what each one of those does, in case you ever want to use them, and you can of course find out more information from us if you do. The first one of those is the Freedom of Information Act. So what that law says is that information that the government has, whether it's the state government or your local governments, that could be Wheeling, that could actually be your school district, the information they have is available to you as a member of the public. That you can request that information and receive it with some limitation. You know, if you ask us, my old school district for my student records, they don't have to give that to you. It wouldn't look pretty and you wouldn't want to see it anyway, but you know, your records as students are protected. And there are exceptions like that for things like security, for things like employee evaluations, things that you probably would expect that have a little bit more of a privacy interest. If you ever want to get information like that, all you have to do is submit a written request to the government body that you need that information from. The next law that we deal with a lot is the Open Meetings Act. And that's a law in Illinois that says every meeting of a public body, so again, whether your village, your school district, your township, that all those meetings have to be open to the public, that they have to inform you about what's going to take place at those meetings, and that you also have the right to speak at those meetings. So, you know, if you have an issue in your local government, if you have something that you want changed, if you just want to inform your elected officials about some issue in the community, you have the right to go to the meeting and speak about it. And there are some limitations on that in terms of time, but generally you can inform your elected officials about whatever it is that you want them to know. That gets to that last point I talked about, the First Amendment, and specifically free speech. You know, you guys as students are supposed to have all of your constitutional rights at school. Now, there's a little bit of limitation on that. And this all dates back to a case in the late 1960s called Tinker versus Des Moines. And what happened was, in the late 60s, as you probably know, the Vietnam War was going on. There was a lot of protests back at home. And some students at Des Moines High School decided to wear black armbands to protest the war. Their school kicked them out. They said, you can't come back here until you take those armbands off. The students sued. The Supreme Court said that those students' rights do not end at the schoolhouse gate when they come to school. I don't think schoolhouses have gates anymore, but regardless. So they do have those First Amendment rights when they come to school. That said, it's not an unlimited thing. The school obviously can place restrictions on you. I know that, I think it was Mr. Cook said that you can't, or he asked you not to cheer wildly like this is a rally. You can if you want to, while I'm speaking anyway. But you know, that's the type of restriction that the school can put on you. It's called a time, place, or manner restriction. So, for instance, during lunch, you might not have much restriction on that. You might be able to talk to your friends about what you want to. Whereas in class, you really aren't allowed to speak unless it's your turn to speak. So, for instance, if it's an issue you really care about, it can be politics, the elections coming up, or you know, one for me personally, I'm a dog person, and I think that cats should be taxed and dog food should be free. So if I talk to my friends about that at lunch, the school really can't stop me. I might end up eating alone, but the school can't stop me. On the other hand, if I talk about that in the middle of math class, that's going to be a problem. I'm probably going to end up getting kicked out and disciplined for that. There are also limitations in terms of speech that is just sort of out of bounds. And you know, the premise is that you can't regulate the content of speech as a school, as a government body, but there are limitations on that. For instance, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater if there is not in fact a fire. You can get in trouble for that under a number of laws, like disorderly conduct and different things, because you are creating a dangerous situation and the law can restrict that. So for instance, in schools, that might mean that you are restricted from swearing, from obscenity. There's a case, I think from the 90s, where a student, actually at an assembly a lot like this, it was on elections, but the stakes were much higher. It was for class president, and one of the candidate's friends gave a very lewd speech, and the school disciplined him, and there was a court case over it, and the Supreme Court said, actually, yeah, you can restrict that speech. It's a school. The school has an interest in maintaining a safe learning environment for the students. There was another one, a really famous case where there was a rally outside the school and a student held a sign that said, "Bong hits for Jesus." I still haven't figured out exactly what that means, but again, the court said, you're not in fact allowed to hold that sign if the school has written a rule that says you can. So those are the main laws we deal with. So we often have people coming to us because they feel that their rights have been infringed upon under those. And we can help them address a government body, try and figure out why their rights are being infringed, hopefully reach a solution. We often people come to us before they see those restrictions and ask us, what their rights are so that they can be informed when they do go somewhere, go to a public meeting or try to get information. So at this point I want to see if anyone has any questions. No? Okay, so quick story. So there's a new law in Illinois on student press rights, your newspaper. And what happened is there is, again, a Supreme Court case that says that in the school newspaper, whether it's here in Wheeling or anywhere else, the school has a right to review what's in that paper, and you don't have your full First Amendment rights. That's a national court case that said that. Illinois lawmakers didn't like that. They thought you should have your full First Amendment rights or close to them when you are writing in a student newspaper. So they wrote a law that said we would go back to the previous standard before that court case that said students have a right to edit, review their own paper, and unless it's something that would really be out of bounds, endanger the school environment, or say Bong hits for Jesus or something, they could put that in paper. So a school near here was in Evanston. Some students on the paper did a long investigation on marijuana use in the school. They interviewed students. They did a survey of use and what was going on. And this was really meant to be an informational spread about an issue that was going on in their high school. And before that went to print, the school pulled the paper and would not allow them to print that. These students approached us. We thought that clearly violated this new law on student press. My boss, Miriam, who I am not, went to the meeting of the school board, the next meeting, and told them that she thought that this paper should be published, that under this law, the school could be sued under this. And what happened is the school negotiated with the students, and eventually that paper was released. So that's the type of issue we might deal with in a school. And with that, unless there are any other questions, I want to turn it over, I think, Heidi can speak next. Thank you.
Good morning. Oh, y'all are much more lively than Elk Grove was last week. I like that. First, I really want to thank the school, the students, the candidates who have come today. Ben Silver, who I've worked with before, he does some great work in the community, for having me here today. Who am I? My name's Heidi Graham. I'm a mom. I have kids about your age. I have a daughter who's a sophomore at Emerson University in Boston. And I have a son who's a sophomore at Prospect High School. And I'm president of the local League of Women Voters. We were actually founded in the movement for women's suffrage, or the women's right to vote, in the 19th Amendment. We're a very old organization, but that doesn't mean we only want old women like me involved. We are open to men and women of any age. So you may have seen our organization registering voters in your hallways. Today we're here helping with your mock election and registering voters. Maybe you've seen one of these vote stickers, or the vote is mightier than the pen styluses floating around. We give every student in District 214 a gift on their 18th birthday to encourage them to vote, and the gift also includes candy. So yeah, I think voting is pretty important. In fact, I spend much of my time volunteering, and I put my money where my mouth is, to live up to the League motto, which is we empower voters and we defend democracy. And that's women and men, old and young, and everyone in between, which is why I guess they asked me to come today to talk to you all about the importance of voting. So why should you vote? Well, when I was preparing for this particular speech, I thought about what I was like when I was in high school, and what my reaction to some middle-aged white lady coming into school to talk to me about voting and why I should vote. And frankly, in the days before cell phones, and I'm that old, I would have been slumped in that back corner passing notes about how lame and boring this lady was. So if you decide to tweet today about how lame and boring I am, I would really appreciate it at least if you tagged us at LWVAHBG. Because any publicity is good publicity. In fact, we actually have a mascot, Ferris 4 Votes, F-E-R-R-I-S, the number 4 votes. It's my dog, a rescued greyhound, as well as other pooches who are trying to encourage everybody to vote, and that's on Instagram. But I digress. So I decided you did not need to listen to me. I know a lot of people your age, and I decided to ask them all why they vote. And here's what some of them, so all people your age, said why they thought voting is important and why they vote. The first text I got was actually from a young man who admitted to me that he had never voted before. He said, personally, I find it hard to sift through biased information and make an objective, informed decision on who to vote for, especially when there's so much drama and noise coming from those running, calling out other politicians rather than telling me what they'll do. With recent political changes, though, I think so many people want to disassociate from the government out of frustration. But this is the time we need to be present, especially young people, in the elections because we are shaping our future. Absolutely, voting shapes your future, and it can be overwhelming and daunting and confusing. But he realizes the importance of taking just a little bit of time to be informed and vote. And did I tell you Lee can do that, and that you should follow us on social media so we can help you do that? But the rest of the texts were all, yes, I vote, and here is why. One person said, I think it's important as our civic duty. We're all lucky to live in a country with freedom of speech and many other liberties other people in the world aren't fortunate enough to have. So if the one thing we have to do that is to keep it that way is to vote, well then it's well worth it. Well, I can agree with that. Last weekend, I wanted to march with the Women's March, and I wanted that to be my protected right. So there are still places in this world where citizens don't have that same freedom. A few people wanted their representatives to have their same values. One person said, I believe it's important to be a part of the political process, and it's also important for me to put people in office who I think are going to do the best job and make progress on the issues that I care about. Or there was this, voting is an important opportunity to be able to vocalize your beliefs. You can take it further by advocating or reaching out to your government officials, but voting is the bare minimum that I think should be done. The ability to vote is what sets the U.S. apart from so many other places. We have the freedom to participate in the government. And then I vote because I want my representatives to value the same issues and concerns I have as a citizen. I actually feel that most people in office don't, so I want to change that. I do actually know through my work with League that our representatives do, for the most part, listen when we write, when we text, when we tweet, or we call them. Some more than others. And so I make my choice on who I vote for based on how well I think they listen. In fact, I've personally met with almost every representative in our area, and most are reasonable. The ones who aren't, well, you can bet that I'm going to be casting a vote to remove them from office. One answer I thought was quite forward-thinking. I think that voting is important for young people in particular because the decisions being made now are going to affect us for our whole lives. Unlike older generations, and she was talking to me, old, we will deal with the repercussions or enjoy the benefits of the decisions we make. And I can tell you in our state that we definitely are dealing with repercussions of actions put into effect when I was born. The pension crisis you hear so much about, and if you haven't heard about the pension crisis, certainly you've heard your parents complain about the high taxes they pay. Well, those are a direct result of the pension crisis. That pension crisis has been difficult to manage because of an ill-conceived clause in our state's 1972 Constitution. I was born in 1970, so yeah, the decisions made by your representatives today will affect you for a long time. One text pointed to voting as helping them to be a better critical thinker and problem solver. I think that by voting, you're exposing yourself to topics and educating yourself on issues, which makes you not only more knowledgeable about the world you live in, but also a better problem solver. Both of these skills are critical to being successful, period. And this reason I really liked because it was local and it was concrete. She said, if you complain about potholes, then vote for someone who will work to repair our streets. That's right. Most of the laws that affect your everyday life are enacted by those people at your local level. I'm a military brat. My dad served in the Air Force for 24 years. So I often give this following reason as a reason that I think people should vote, but I was really excited to hear it from somebody half my age. They said, I vote because it's important to exercise the right that others have fought for. It's important because it gives us a voice. My daughter's best friend texted me this, and she made me really proud and proved that she was not slumped in the back corner. She was actually listening to me. She said, I vote because it's my civic duty and responsibility, and by participating in the democratic system, I help to guarantee its ability to function as an institution. On a different level, I find voting to be very important because the best reason I can give is that the enemy of justice is inaction, not injustice. So I think it's important to participate if you want to live in a just society. I love that because I want to live in a just society. And League works really hard to make sure that we live in a just society, that everybody has the right to vote. And this brings me to my last response. A neighbor of mine moved to Florida. and her children attend Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. As a mother, I can't imagine what it must have been like for her that day, the day of the deadliest school shooting in history. I can't imagine what it would have been like to be a child or a student at that school or a teacher. And her daughter, who graduated last year and was in attendance at school on that day, gave this reason for voting. I vote because I personally experienced a school shooting, pardon me, that killed 17 of my classmates and teachers. I understand the importance of voting in local elections like the school board, the governor, our state president, in a whole new way. I also vote because we live in a multicultural, multi-generational community. The elected officials need to better balance the diversity, the age, the gender, the color, the socioeconomic level of the people. So, I hope one of those reasons sticks with you, and I hope when you're old enough to vote, you vote. Thank you.
Anybody know Dick Durbin? Raise your hand. Dick Durbin. Could you tell me in a really loud voice, who is Dick Durbin? He is our Illinois senator. Yes. He sent a message just for you guys, just for the students here at Wheeling High School. So tell me what he has to say to you.
We're fortunate to live in this great nation, this constitutional democracy. And that document, our Constitution, written over 200 years ago, was not perfect, but it really gave us a guideline and a map that we followed to this moment in history. And one of the things it says is that every 2 years, the citizens of America have an opportunity to speak not just words, but more importantly, to make decisions that speak to their values. That's what an election is all about. If you spend your time either praising or criticizing the government we have, your opportunity every 2 years is to step up and make sure your vote counts in terms of the future of this government and what it's going to do for you. I remember going into the NBC studios in New York City for a show, and on the way in I spotted one of the Parkland students. I'd seen him on TV. He didn't waste any time. He came up to me and he said, "I want to know what your situation is when it comes to the gun lobby. Do you take money from the gun lobby?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I hope that you'll be on our side when it comes to gun safety." And I said, "I certainly will. I'm sorry for what you've gone through, and your friends as well." Those Parkland students made a big difference. They were so credible. They were ruthless when it came to politicians of both political parties, and they really held us accountable. That's what a democracy is all about. These students are leading in establishing democratic values that are important for our future. Every student should understand they have the same power and the same opportunity.
Good morning, Wheeling. Thank you for coming. My name is Jerry Sager. I'm one of the teachers in this district, and I'm going to explain to you why some of these people here, well, all of these people are so very, very, very important. But before I do that, I want to ask you guys a few questions. Question number one. How many of you just can't wait to go speak publicly at an open board meeting? Raise your hand. One? Come on, there's got to be more than that. Okay, how about, I got another one for you. How many of you are sitting at the edge of your seats because you just can't wait to put up a bunch of tacky yard signs? Yard signs, anybody? Come on. Oh, awesome. I see one yard sign for two, three, four. Okay, we're doing better. Yep, those yard signs are great. Great yard decorations, yes. How many of you love to bother the living daylights out of your neighbors who want absolutely nothing to do with you as you try to arm them with very important information about their candidates? Oh, I see some people who love to be annoying neighbors. Awesome. We love you. Please talk to these people before you leave. How many of you live to call people you don't know and to knock on doors only to be treated like an inconvenience? And that's by the really, really nice people. Anybody love to call people you don't know and get treated not so nicely? Please come up here before you leave today. And this is my personal favorite. How many of you are just chomping at the bit to learn about things like infrastructure? Infrastructure, anybody? Ah, yes. Please don't leave. I want to talk to you personally. Awesome. Okay. So when I was your age, those delights were about the farthest things from my mind. But this thinking was very, very wrong. What I know now is that it's much easier to stop a problem before it exists than to try to do something about it after it's there. I always thought voting was important, but I found it easy to get caught up in my day-to-day life. I was a busy mother, I had a career, and I had students that I cared about. And every once in a while, I actually liked to have fun. But one day I had a very rude awakening. I realized that I had a problem in my own backyard that was life-threatening. I learned that freight trains rolling alongside my home were carrying what's been compared to an atomic bomb-sized explosion. The cargo they carry is so toxic, it can kill a person in 2 breaths. The first thought shooting through my mind was that not long before there had been a derailment near my home, and my community depends on well water. I had my drinking water assessed and learned it contained methane along with other toxic chemicals. Can it come from the trains? I don't know. I can't prove it. The next horrific thought assaulted me was the image of my daughter, who was pregnant at the time, drinking this water from her home. Exposure to chemicals carried by these freight trains can cause cancer, sterility, birth defects, and genetic mutations. It could be years before any damage caused by exposure surfaces, and even if it does, I'll never be able to prove cause. I have no comparison. So in my very naive thinking, I figured my mayor, not any District 214 mayor, you guys have great ratings, but I figured surely he must not know, because he would tell us if he had information that there was something traveling past our homes and schools that came with a 1-mile radius and 2-mile diameter blast zone. Surely he'd tell us. And I took it upon myself to go tell him, and let's say that did not go well. Not only did he know, but he had no intention of telling anyone in my community about this issue. I figured I could spin my wheels trying to convince a mayor who obviously had no plans of doing what I considered his moral responsibility. Or I could do what I hoped someone would do for me if he or she knew what I knew. So I decided to do whatever it was I could think of doing to tell people. I threw in my hat and experienced firsthand what it was like to campaign for public office. This also was a very unpleasant experience. And what I learned after walking to over 5,000 homes and making what seemed like a gazillion phone calls to people who either weren't home, didn't answer, hung up, or gave me a piece of their mind, was that I had no business pointing my finger at my mayor. The person I needed to point my finger at was me. It was my fault that someone like him, who in my opinion had no business in public office, was now sitting in a position of authority. Waiting until you have a devastating problem in your own backyard is the wrong way to find out about how important it is to pay attention to what's going on around you. The candidates and elected officials you're about to hear from are going to be making some of the most important decisions that will directly impact your day-to-day quality of life and the lives of your children and grandchildren. So please listen to them. Do your research, and if you find candidates here who you support, come up here and talk to them and help them. There's a lot of work to be done, and there's many ways that you, even though you're not yet if you're not 18 yet, there's many ways that you can still help in a campaign. You can find our website information at engagetoday.com. And if you don't hear anything you like today, think about running for office yourself. I highly recommend it. It's changed my life. You can be the change that's needed. I'd like to thank Jerry Cook for opening up the doors to our candidates and allowing students to take time from their busy schedules to come and listen to what they have to say. And thank you to our tech and custodial staff for being our nuts and bolts behind the scenes. I'd like to thank Aaron Brooks from District 214 Education for taking the time to provide direction and to help make connections. Hats off to Citizen Advocacy Center, who helped me at a time when I needed help most. They were my first line of help. And to Heidi Graham and Stacy Tobin from League of Women Voters for describing to our students the important work their organization does, and how even students who are not yet 18 can take action to make their communities better and improve the quality of life for future generations. Thank you so much, Jim Slusher, for helping students formulate questions and for co-moderating. And last but not least, a big shout out to Barry Hanrahan, Sarah Stubing, and Adriana Soto for the work you've done to help prepare our students and staff for this event. And thank you to all of you for taking the time to make this initiative come together to help you guys, our hope for a better future. We also have a surprise visit here from a currently elected official who will be introduced very shortly.
Thank you. Today we have the great honor and privilege of welcoming candidates and elected officials from a variety of different levels of government. As we begin our forum, I'd like to introduce our guests and provide a brief description of their backgrounds. I ask that our guests come to the stage one at a time as I introduce them, stand as I read their biography, and then be seated. Our first guest is candidate Mark Walker. Mr. Walker is a decorated Vietnam veteran and a veterans advocate. Serving as state representative from 2009 to 2011, his areas of focus included budget reform, procurement reform, and supporting small businesses. Mr. Walker is a management expert and entrepreneur with a long career in financial services, community development, and quality consulting. He is the former board member and treasurer for Journeys, The Road Home, an organization serving homeless individuals and families, and is the recipient of the Abner Mikva Award for Political Courage. Mr. Walker has been an Arlington Heights resident for more than 30 years. He's an active father, volunteer, soccer coach, and Park District Foundation board member. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Next, we have candidate Daniel Didech. Candidate Didech, who is contending for the 59th Illinois Representative District. Mr. Didech was born in Buffalo Grove by a family of small business owners and is a graduate of Stevenson High School in District 96 schools. He worked at Jewish Child and Family Services, where he advocated for children with special needs and their families. Currently, Mr. Didech is a local government attorney, where he provides legal counsel to suburban villages, school districts, park districts, and community colleges. In 2016, Mr. Didech decided to run for Vernon Township Supervisor. During his first year as Vernon Township Supervisor, he cut the township's property tax by over 5%, while at the same time expanding services that the township provides to our community. Mr. Didech decided to run for state representative because Springfield needs more leaders with a proven track record of cutting property taxes, fighting for the middle class, and taking on the career politicians who are holding our community back. Thank you, Mr. Didech. At the municipal level, we have the village president of Wheeling, Pat Horcher. President Horcher is a member of a Wheeling family of long-standing, among the first to settle within the village's present limits. He began his first full term on May 1st, 2017. Prior to being elected, he served as an elected village trustee for 16 years. In addition to his service to the village, President Horcher is a longtime member of the Board of Directors of the Cook County Farm Bureau, an organization that provides farmers with advocacy and resources and educates the public about the importance of agriculture. President Horcher was educated in Wheeling's public schools and holds a diploma from Wheeling High School. He has done extensive higher education coursework through William Rainey Harper College in a variety of disciplines, including plant biology, floral and landscape design, accounting, law, philosophy, anthropology, and fine arts. Thank you, Mr. Horcher. Next is College of Lake County Trustee Amanda Howland. Trustee Howland was a candidate for Illinois Congress 6th District in the 2018 primary election, where she fought amongst 6 other contenders for a chance to take U.S. Representative Peter Roskim's Republican stronghold. Trustee Howland is a civil rights attorney, cancer survivor, Democratic activist, and former special education teacher and elementary school principal in Northern Illinois. She graduated from Central Michigan University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Special Education and Psychology, and then received a Master of Arts in Psychology from Michigan State University. Later, she earned her Master's of Science in Educational Administration from Northern Illinois University, then continued her academic career at Chicago-Kent College of Law. During her years as an educator and administrator, Trustee Howland witnessed selfish politicians favor special interests over their hard-working constituents. Her drive to make a positive change and her passion for serving others led Trustee Howland to leave education to pursue a career as an attorney. She currently serves on the College of Lake County Board. Thank you, Trustee Howland. Lastly, we are going to welcome Representative Jonathan Carroll. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself. We're so lucky to have him here today. We weren't sure if he was going to be able to be here.
Brad, Sandra, do you have me, Brad?
Good morning, Wheeling High School. Are we awake or what? All right, a little bit. So, well, first of all, I am State Representative Jonathan Carroll. And before I begin, I want to thank Mark Walker, who is the reason why I'm standing here today. Mark Walker interviewed me. I replaced Elaine Neckrich last year. They had a list of very qualified candidates, and Mark Walker thought I would be up for this job. So thank you, Mr. Walker, for the opportunity. But I want to thank you guys for coming out here today to hear what we're having to say. Your vote, as you get older, is the most important thing that you have as an American citizen. You know, people complain about what's going on in our country, what's going on in our state, what's going on in Washington. All of those things are really up to you to decide. 1 in 5 millennials in 2016 voted. 1 in 5. We need you guys out to vote and vote for people you care about. Okay, enough of that. About me. I am a former special education teacher. I've been working in private practice for about 15 years helping children and adults with learning differences like ADHD, executive functioning challenges, spectrum disorders. And about a year or so ago, I was approached to replace a representative who was in Springfield for a long time by the name of Elaine Neckrich, as I mentioned before. I've been very active since becoming a member of the House. The bill I am most proud of created a universal 72-hour waiting period for all gun purchases in Illinois. Thank you. The governor had originally vetoed my bill. We fought, and we got a better version of the bill that he signed. So that's my proud achievement. And what we hear a lot from people is we get pounds of cure for the issue in our country that are guns. We need ounces of prevention, and what I'm working on is more legislation for that. I am passionate about education as being a former teacher. I am passionate about food allergies. How many in this room have food allergies? How many of you go to a restaurant and have no idea what you're going to eat? Well, I have a daughter who's the same way, and that's an issue that's very important. So something I'm working towards is more food safety. And finally, I just want to continue representing this district well. Thank you.
Okay, before we continue, we're just going to ask you, Wheeling students, I want you to think back to the words that Mr. Cook said at the beginning. We're going to ask you to stay focused for the rest of this. We're about to start hearing from our candidates and their direct opinions. We know this is a lot of sitting, but it's really important information, so we just ask that you refocus. If you have any devices, please put them away. And we're going to try to not talk for the rest of this debate. We just want to be respectful of our candidates and the time that they've given us. Thank you to the candidates and elected officials for taking the time to be here with us today. We have the good fortune of having two Wheeling's high school debaters, Saida Khan and Alexander Rothberg, to co-moderate. Follow-up questions and redirection will also be provided by our moderator, Jim Slusher, Deputy Manager, Editor for the Daily Herald. The questions that will be asked have been formulated by our students with help from Jim Slusher. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please write it on a note card and pass it toward the center aisle. There may be some students needing to enter or leave the theater when passing bell rings. Please do so quietly and without interrupting the discussion. Please refrain from packing up, getting out cell phones, or talking with friends until the panel discussion has officially ended. And with that, we will begin.
Hello everyone, my name is Alexander Rothberg and I'm the current debate captain of Wheeling.
My name is Saida Khan, I'm a sophomore at Wheeling High School. For the next 40 minutes we'll be asking respective questions.
Yeah, and we just want to remind the candidates to please refrain from going over 3 minutes for answering these questions. Now to start off, we wanted to begin at the municipal level, so these questions will be directed at Trustee Howland and President Horcher. We want to start off with what issues are your top priorities for your respective positions?
Is the mic on? Yes, no? Good morning, guys. I know this is a long time for you to sit. As a former teacher and principal, I understand your pain. So, I am a trustee at the College of Lake County. The most important issues to me right now for students like you who are going to be coming up and graduating and going on to college are keeping the college costs affordable, making sure that your student loans are not out of control with high interest rates, and making sure that we service everybody in the community, diversity, equity, regardless of gender, economic status, or anything else. We want to keep our schools the top priority because you are the future for our whole system. You are the people who are going to lead this country forward, and don't forget that, please. You are extremely important, and your education is important.
My priorities are...
Speak a little closer to the mic.
My priorities are a little more industrial. I'm the president of the Village of Wheeling. My main priority is making sure that the machine that is your community keeps operating. We have to make sure that the industry is healthy, that the commerce is healthy, and that the residents are happy. And what this means is maintaining a balance of development. It's not exciting. It's not going to wake you up. We need to make sure we have a balance of industry and commerce and residents so that the taxes are better distributed among the residents and among the businesses. We need to make sure that you are all safe. That's police and fire. We need to make sure that the water keeps coming into your homes and out of your homes in a safe manner. None of it's really exciting, but it is the day-to-day operations of the village. It's business. It's making sure everything stays balanced and that everybody is safe and secure. In case anybody hadn't noticed, over the last month or so, I've been a little distracted with some other issues, but there was a personal issue I did have when I got elected, and I am pursuing it at a civic level. There is an issue with healthcare in this country, and I don't care who comes up with the right answer. I don't care which side of the fence comes up with an answer. But in America, we are one of the most successful industrial countries in the world. There is no excuse for not having a successful public health care program. I don't care if you're doing but until the guys at the higher level come up with a plan that works, there are local programs through the township that are available. And what I wanted to do when I got started, and I still want to bring it forward, I want it to become more public. Like the township has programs for dentists and some basic immunization kind of things. And I would like them to just become more public and just to make the residents aware of the programs that we do have in Canada for everybody. But otherwise, it's just it's more of an industrial job, right?
Our state colleges are suffering due to a lack of funding. Unlike businesses, our professors may be fleeing to other states. What allocations are needed that will channel more funding to our colleges and maintain the quality of our campuses and educational resources? Municipal.
Okay, there are several things that are going on right now with colleges. As you all know, college costs are rising. We at College of Lake County, and I know Harper College also, and our sister colleges in Elgin and elsewhere in the state are doing everything we can for cost containment. We are working hard not only to bring in more grant money, we've got people working full-time bringing in grants that help students. All of us have instituted a College Promise program. You may have heard a little bit about it, where students who meet certain requirements and whose families are at certain income levels, if you follow through the 2 years that you come to our institution, you are guaranteed 2 full years of free college that you can transfer onto any one of a number of schools throughout the country. We also are working at CLC to make sure that our foundation board is raising money to help with tuition scholarships for students who are in need. In addition to that, we are working to make sure that we provide the programs that you need that are going to find you a job. So we have a business partnership with various organizations throughout the county and state where they will help pay for your training so that you can come and intern with them. And the final thing that we've been doing is to lower tuition costs and book fees. We've put as much of a cap as we can on our tuition. We try very hard not to raise that. But with our textbooks, we've gone to a lot of the MOOCs. I don't know if you know what the online courses are that are available. We do a lot of things online now, and a lot of our textbooks are online so that students don't have to pay $100 for a textbook for a class.
I don't agree with you. I don't expect college tuitions other than private businesses in the state.
But actually, our state candidates could have something to do with what's happening with expenses at colleges as well as our federal candidates, because you, as I'm sure you understand, we get money at the collegiate level not only from the federal government, but from state and local governments, and so they may be able to have some insight into that too.
If any of the state candidates at this time would like to add insight, please feel free to.
All right, so let me answer this a couple of ways for you. It's a great question that you asked, because look, this is something that affects you. It affects me as a father of 2 children that are a few years younger than you. What are we doing to make sure that our great universities in Illinois are both A, competitive, and B, retaining the students that we already have? So let me talk about a couple of things. And again, I took over a year ago, but my understanding was before I took over, we had some real challenge. It's obvious we had challenges by not having a budget. And by not having a budget, we weren't paying for a lot of essential services like universities. And yes, there was some talk that we lost some talent on the university level because of that issue. We have a budget now. We have a solid budget now. We're hopefully going to have a strong budget moving forward, and we're going to rebuild up our strong universities. So I think that's really where we have to go with this, is making sure that we are compensating and keeping our talent in the state of Illinois. And I would say to all of you who are looking at colleges as you get older, this is a great state to work in. This is a great state to live in. Don't always listen to the rhetoric otherwise. The opportunities here are boundless. People have done great things here. Think of it this way. We had 2 billionaires running for governor. We have 2 billionaires right now running for governor. Where did they make their money? Thank you.
Could I add one other question for the state candidates? There's been a lot of talk about the difficulties that our state universities are having because of the budget problems that the state had. But there are also some issues related to accessibility to them for other students. And particularly at U of I, there is concern that it concentrates so heavily on taking foreign students that a lot of our Illinois students are having trouble getting in. Are there any things that the state should be doing to help promote accessibility to state universities to Illinois students?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And one of the issues that we've been seeing in Illinois, especially lately, is too many of our residents leaving the states. And that's a big reason exactly why. When you go to college outside the state, you put down roots there, you make networks, and you're a lot less likely to move back to Illinois when you're done with college. So making sure that we have, making sure that our college years are accessible to people in Illinois is a very high priority. And we also need to be using our colleges as a magnet to bring even more people to Illinois. We need to do a lot to improve the economic engines here, and the only way to do that is to bring more people in. So I think it's a balance, right? We want to make sure that people here in Illinois do have access to our high quality education, but we also do want to make sure that they're a magnet to bring even more people here as well.
We have a follow-up question. Given that the average student debt in Illinois has more than doubled during the last 10 years at the largest Illinois institutions, what legislation is necessary to prevent this pattern of exponential growth in the future? This can be directed at any candidate.
The first thing that has to happen is at the federal level, where student interest, loan interest rates are outrageous. I am obviously an adult who went to law school later in life, and I'm still paying off law school loans at a rate of 8.5% to 9% on that loan. And I know students who are paying loans at 11% or 12%. Something has to happen at the federal level so that the interest rates are brought down so that it's not a huge money-making endeavor. Defaults on student loans are one of the highest default rates for any kind of loan in the nation. So that's one thing that has to happen, and that's going to happen in Washington. At the state level, what we have to do is we have to make sure that we keep our costs down and competitive, and that we don't have a top-heavy administration level of overly paid administrators at our schools. We want the money to be going just like we do here at your high school. We want the money to be going into you and your education. While we want teachers and administrators to be paid sufficiently so that we keep them here and that we keep the best talent here, we also want to make sure that it doesn't happen at the loss of providing the services to you as students that we need to provide.
I'm going to jump in on that one too. You know, here's the problem with what's going on with student loan debt, and everything that was said is very accurate. We have predatory universities out there. What I mean by that is there's universities that are online universities, there's universities that have popped up all over the place because they have an opportunity to be for-profit universities, and they prey on people because they offer them the path of least resistance to get a solid education. What happens is they charge big money to people, they make big promises, and they don't deliver. So people have gone out to these universities because they're available to them to say, well, I want to get a college degree, and if I can do it in this path, it would be easiest. What I would strongly encourage everyone in this room to do who wants to get a degree after high school in one sort or the other, do your research. Start asking questions. Ask where are your alumni placed? What kind of work are they in? What kind of stuff do you want to do? Ask all those questions. Just because someone promises you this beautiful degree doesn't necessarily mean it's worth the paper it's printed on. So you have to ask those questions as well and become educated to that. On the state level, I want to make sure that we get these predatory universities out of our way, out of our system, and can start identifying them and making them more transparent in what they're really doing to you guys.
To piggyback on that, you brought up a really good point. most of the Pell Grants that come at the federal level, the high majority of the money is going to these predatory universities, these online for-profit universities. And students are coming out, like you said, with a degree that's absolutely worthless. They're not finding jobs in the job market, so then the loans aren't getting paid back. And it's a shame, and Senator Durbin, who you saw in the video, fought vigorously to have constraints put on those types of schools. And now with the current administration in Washington, those have all been kind of rolled back. So vote for people that are going to fight for getting rid of these predatory universities.
Can I just add a couple of thoughts? One is when you're looking at your future, and we'll all have futures, consider the community colleges as a way to get to other options in your life. There are a lot of good community colleges, especially local ones, that have programs that feed directly into other degree programs, programs that get you credited more expensive four-year colleges, programs that will train you to take jobs in our industrial sector locally, many jobs which will not be moved overseas, which in fact pay more than the average college regular degree graduate gets. So consider technical training, consider community colleges as a bridge to other opportunities. The opportunities are here. Just go take them.
Thank you, Trustee Howland and President Horcher. We now want to approach our state candidates, candidate Didech, candidate Carroll, and candidate Walker. What issues are your top priorities for your respective positions?
I want people to believe in the state of Illinois as a great place to live, a great place to work, a great place to get a job. It in fact has many, many strengths, and we have to build on those strengths. That's really why I'm running. We've spent probably 10 years listening to politicians tell us what a horrible state Illinois is, and it's absolutely ridiculous. It's in fact false advertising for political gain, and we should be past that. What I want to talk to you directly about is the fact that every single one of you can be effective in our government. If you can talk to your friends and listen well, you can communicate well enough to be active in government. Even better, if you can listen to the people you don't especially like and understand them, then you really can be effective in government because you have to always listen to both sides. If you can march, if you can get in a parade and have fun, if you can go to a party and mingle, then you have the strength to be an effective politician. I was considered very shy in high school, and I laid back. And what got me into politics was a series of kind of random events. I got together with a fellow veteran who was interested in the political movement, and I helped him out. I got involved in local politics because I was moved by a high school band in a 4th of July parade, and then along came a political party group that looked like fun, so I just jumped into the parade. Anyone can get involved in politics. Anyone has the strength to do it, and it's fun. Let me just say, in ending, I'm a veteran. I run businesses. I've worked all over the world. I've started businesses. The reality is some of my most difficult days were in high school. From my experience, I would predict that college will be easier for you than high school is. That your first job, while it'll be difficult at first, will become easier than many of your days in high school. Your good days are in front of you, and your strength is in front of you. Any one of you can easily do the job that I'm running for, easily be active in politics, easily be effective in helping you, your friends, and the people you don't especially like meet their own goals. So I encourage you to do that.
So I agree with everything Representative Walker said, so I'm not going to repeat those points, but another very, very high priority for me is pushing back on and fighting against some of the very dangerous proposals we see coming out of Washington, D.C. right now and in the White House. We've seen proposals that we should be arming teachers in schools. My wife's a teacher, she's a 6th grade math teacher in Buffalo Grove. I think the last thing we need to be doing right now is putting more guns in classrooms. We should be taking guns out of classrooms. I also think we need to be pushing back on the healthcare bills that would roll back coverage for pre-existing conditions. I have a pre-existing condition, almost everybody in my family does, probably many people in this room do as well. We need to make sure that we have a healthcare system that works for everybody, and just because you got sick once doesn't mean that you're never going to get healthcare for the rest of your life. And thirdly, we need to push back very hard against the very dangerous, inhumane, and frankly, evil immigration policies coming out of Washington right now. There are children being held in Illinois right now who are parents at the border. And child welfare is a state issue. It's not just a federal issue. So as state representative, we're going to exercise more oversight over those detention centers, do what we can to reunite families, and stop the very evil practices of tearing families apart. Because we are here in Illinois, we're a welcoming community. I know some people don't want us to be, but that's what we're going to be fighting for, to make sure that everybody here, no matter where you came from, no matter where your parents came from, you're wanted here, we love you here, and we're going to be fighting against the people.
Thanks, Dan. I don't know how to follow that up. So let me give you some of my thoughts. First of all, I love the state of Illinois. I went to DePaul University, I went to Northeastern Illinois University, I've lived here my whole life. I've been happy and sad with the sports teams that I cheer for, and I want to be in Illinois the rest of my life. I want my children to love Illinois the way that I do. And I think Representative Walker said it best when he said that there's a lot of people that love bashing our state, but I think it's very unwarranted. I think that we live in the best state in the country. We think we live in a state that offers us the most opportunities. I got, as I mentioned in my beginning thing, I got a call a year or so ago with this opportunity, and I said there's one of two choices that I can have. Either one is I can stay on the sideline and keep criticizing, or get on the playing field and try to do something about it. Well, I'm on the playing field now, and it's a great opportunity to do things I'm passionate about, like education, as I mentioned before, like child safety. My wife is an immigrant in this country. She came here with her family when she was 3 years old from Russia. She was darn right the issues of immigrants affect my family as well. My wife may not have been here today if it was that the policies that we're seeing in Washington are happening. So on a local level, we have to make sure that all these issues that scare us nationally, we protect locally. Let's go back to the pre-existing conditions. Again, these are the terms that you guys hear that sometimes may not mean a lot to you, but as when you walk in your doctor's office and on your insurance card it says, well, we're not going to cover asthma because you had asthma before, or like I said, the food allergies or anything that you've had, that's a very scary proposition for a lot of us. So Obamacare allowed us the opportunity to make sure that pre-existing conditions weren't exempt from health care, and that's the first thing that right now is going on in Washington. They want to overturn. So, having great health care is important. I think President Horcher, what he said about the health care is really, really true. In this country, it's a shame and a disgrace that people in this country don't get the health care that they need. So that's something else we have to look at. Finally, I'll follow up what Dan said before about guns and arming teachers and all that stuff. When these terms come out, just because locally here people think it's not necessarily a good idea, does not mean that people nationally don't feel the same way. And I'll tell you, even in the state of Illinois, there are several counties right now that would love the idea of arming teachers, would love the idea of more guns. The solution to their gun violence problem is arm everybody. So you have to be very careful and pay attention to those things. And that's the reason why I'm here, is because I want to make sure that my children are safe, you're safe, and everybody else is safe. Thank you.
So to follow off that point, we want to talk about what current gun safety regulations exist in Illinois.
Well, I mentioned that I was the proud sponsor of the 72-hour universal wait period in Illinois for all gun purchases. That was my pride and joy. That's my first bill, and so that's something that I will always remember. We were working on gun dealer licensing that would stop the straw purchases of guns. Who knows what a straw purchase of guns is? Can you please raise your hand? Thank you. Straw purchases mean, for those that don't know, that when somebody walks in the store and I go in the store and Dad says, hey John, can you go buy me a gun because I can't, and I do. So that's what a straw purchase is called. How many people in here have heard of ghost guns? Okay, we've got one person that knows. Ghost guns are the guns that are made that are actually guns that don't have serial numbers, that are made by third-party people that aren't gun manufacturers. Those are very dangerous too. We don't know how they're going to work, and when they get in the hands of criminals, those are the guns a lot of them like to use in crimes. They go for high amounts of money because they're not traceable. The 3D printing of guns, who's heard of that? Well, these are things that we are working on legislation on to make sure that those things aren't on the streets. So I'm a proud chief and co-sponsor of the gun bureau licensing bill. We're working on these things. We recognize that it's a problem, but I will tell you that just because, I always will say to you, just because in this area we recognize it one way doesn't mean it's across the state. Governor Rauner has threatened to veto the gun bureau licensing bill. We work very hard at it on a bipartisan basis, and we're going to continue working at it. So that's my thing with gun safety. Is, we have to the answer to guns is not arming more people. The answer to guns is making sure that they're not getting in bad people's hands, and that's what we're going to work to do.
I think also if you watch, at least in our area, you will see that all of the schools, including the community colleges and the colleges, and many businesses have the no gun symbol on their doors. And while that's not a law per se, it is something that is enforced by those particular organizations and businesses. So that's something else that's happening in order to try and make the gun safety issue a little bit better.
Let me just add on one point. I like everything that John and have said so far, but I have a specific interest. I am a combat veteran. I carried what is in fact a military-style assault weapon. I know what it does. I know what it was designed for. I know the range it has. I know it's designed specifically to kill people in such a way that they're hard to even save with surgery. That is what people say is just another rifle, just another semi-automatic. That is nonsense. We should ban military-style assault weapons, including the AR-15. I don't care how loud it is and how much fun it is for anyone to shoot. It is a destructive, person-killing weapon that has no place in civil society. The military and police want to have them. I have no beef with that, but we really should go back to what we did before and ban those kinds of military-style assault weapons. The other thing is, when people say that there is an unlimited right to bear arms, that is in fact false. There's no unlimited right to bear arms. There have been many court decisions that allow us to regulate arms. America was not founded on the right to bear arms. These are positions that people have pushed, and many people in our communities believe them. They really don't reflect the values of America. I think for us to be safe and for us to have a reasonable civil society, we need to ban assault weapons.
Could I ask a question, Representative Walker, that might bear on a couple of other things that you said, and others can jump in as well. But much of what you're saying as it relates to guns, people in urban and suburban areas would identify with differently than people in more rural areas, a large portion of the state. How does someone in the legislature deal, as you said previously, with somebody maybe who you disagree with or don't like? How do you deal on this issue, which is so emotional, with some cultures that look at guns completely differently?
I was going to answer that because that's a great question. We dealt with this term. I'm sorry, Mark, I will let you jump back in. I think that that's a great question. When we have the Southern Caucus, there are people that have guns. It's something they have to keep sort of their cattle safe and other things safe. So you want to try to work with people on compromise on those issues. You don't say, well, let's disarm everybody down south, because they need those in certain scenarios. So you want to make sure those people that own guns own them the right way, know how to use them, store them, maintain them, all of those things. So that's really important.
I think the best way is to come to some agreement on what we're talking about in terms of gun use or any use. I mean, I know that I grew up with guns in the house, so I'm familiar with them. I think everyone would understand what is needed for hunting and useful for hunting, what is needed for personal safety, if that's what you're interested in, and what's needed for home safety. I have no problem talking about all those things. The military-style assault weapon is in another category that doesn't really fit into any of those three. So we can agree on what it is about the utility weapons that you're defending and feel strongly about, then I'm sure they're very
And another important policy we need, which maybe President Horcher will appreciate, is we need local control on a lot more issues. Because you're exactly right, the values in a lot of communities in the suburbs are very different than downstate, and there's different needs and there's different priorities. The village of Deerfield, the city of Highland Park, they recently passed local assault weapon bans. There's litigation going on right now because it's a little unclear whether they have the authority to do that or not. One thing I think we need to change is make it clear that municipalities like that do have that authority. So we can have some different laws for the city and the suburbs versus what we have in more rural areas of the state. I think that's fair for everybody, and I think that's what people want.
Okay.
Just to chime in, because I didn't get to talk too much on that. On issues like gun control, it's great when you hear the politicians, the public servants talk about making more laws. But the thing that everyone has to keep in mind is that it really all it took was to create a law to prevent shootings and murder. We would not have had a murder since the Ten Commandments. Okay, it really goes back to the whole community, and this goes to the school shootings as well. I mean, 'cause I actually prepared for that one. There's a field good answer that I can give that says, well, you know, we have more police available in the school, and we can have more security, and we can put in the metal detectors. But the fact of the matter, and that sounds great, the fact of the matter is, relative to school shootings, and relative to a criminal element, and relative to the relative who might just snap at and kill his family member and kill himself, you are the ones who see this first. You know your friends, you know the ones who are on the fringe. When I was in high school, right here, suicide, there were a few suicides, and that seems to be the method of coping. For some reason, society has shifted. And yes, police would be here quickly if there was a shooting. That's after it starts. You all know your friends. You all know the school counselors. You all know the school security. You know maybe to say something. How's it go if you see something, say something? Well, so I'm not a good politician. I fumble. But the fact of the matter is, security, like for a school, you are the best eyes and ears for that, and say something. And relative to gun laws, if laws are all it took, like I said, there wouldn't have been a murder since the 10 Commandments. We have to start working together as a society. That's all I have to say.
Well, at the local level, as he just said, the one thing that we cannot do in our schools, and it's happening right now, is making the cutbacks on our social services in our school, where our school social workers and our school psychologists are the ones being cut back, because frequently they are the ones who notice the students who have the issues. Our mental health facilities need to be ramped up, not cut back.
Thank you. As we conclude today's discussion, we have 5 minutes remaining, and we want to ask specifically about school shootings. What legislation will you sponsor or support to make public spaces and schools in Illinois safer?
Well, we need to do an all-of-the-above approach, and I think President Horcher is correct. You're never going to get rid of all crime, you're never going to get rid of all violence, but as public officials, as people who are stepping up to say that we are assuming this duty to keep our community safe, it's incumbent on us to do absolutely everything we can to keep guns out of school and to keep our community more safe. So I think we need to ban assault rifles, and like Mr. Walker said, those are the types of weapons where their only purpose is to kill other human beings. There's no self-defense purpose, there's no hunting purpose. The only reason why they exist is to kill not only human beings, but a lot of human beings. So we need to make sure that those cannot be sold here in Illinois anymore. And we need the red flag laws because President Horcher is absolutely correct. You will know better than anybody else, and your family members will know if somebody close to you is about to become a danger to themselves or others. So we need to have a mechanism in place that's very strong. So if somebody does become a danger to themselves or others, there is a way to take their firearms away from them, at least on a temporary basis.
I want to say this, and I want to piggyback on the mental health issue. You know, it's become the scapegoat of politics. Mental health, mental health, mental health. It's people with mental health issues that are doing these shootings. It's people with mental health issues that are doing this, that are doing that. And I will tell you right now, I'm so sick and tired of politicians talking about mental health and not funding it, not fixing it, and not helping it. Mental health is a major problem in this country. I had this same speech on the House floor when one of my colleagues on the other side brought up mental health, and I said, stop talking about it and start funding it. Start finding solutions for it. When somebody is having a problem, let's help them. Let's make mental health a priority. Let's make mental health available to people. Let's talk to people. I really like what President Horcher said. If you have somebody that you know is hurting, help them. Get them the help that they need. That's what we have to do. And again, it's back to the pounds of cure, like, well, let's put metal detectors in, let's do this, let's do that. Heck no. Let's start talking to people before they even step foot in the school. Let's talk to people when they have problems so they're able to talk about them and work through them. And when we're ready to do that, we can have serious conversations about what it will take to make sure that people are safe.
Thank you. This concludes our questions.
Thank you.